So for some reason, there is something higher than our mind that sees broader than our mind can, and is constantly communicating to us if we have new conditioning to value our feelings and our emotions, to value our body as well as our mind. Like, you think, Jace, all of the terminology that we have is like mind over matter.
Yeah.
Well, that's saying the mind is more important than the body, right? We're
Yes.
instead of realizing we've got these three like super powerful tools, and we're trying to go through life with one. It's like building a house with a wrench. Where's your other tools?
Hello and welcome to Uncovered, the podcast with your host, Jason Irving. Join me in a journey to understand what's truly happening in your world and the world around you. This is not about how you're living life on the surface. It's about what's truly driving you from under the covers. I'm going to take you on a journey to deeply uncover the reason why you are here, the ultimate purpose in your problems, and the way that they have shaped your life up until now. See, I believe you have a purpose, and your problems are the highway towards ultimate realization of that journey towards freedom and the reconnection of your true self. I've been told I have a different spin on most things, and I'll be giving you my understanding of life, love, and what we're all here for, purpose. To get the best out of this podcast, drop what you already know so you can discover what's beyond you. So join me, let's play this game of life and bring on liberation, transformation, and change. Let's do this. Hey guys, welcome to Uncovered. I'm super excited. I've got an amazing woman that I've been hanging out with for quite a while. We're going to be focusing on how important relationship dynamics are and what we can do to make them the best we can be. Jess is an amazing relationship dynamic coordinator. She's got this ability to get the best out of people, find out what's stuck, and how to get a relationship flowing. So Jess, welcome to Uncovered. Thank you so much for jumping on today.
For having me, Jace. Happy to be here.
So Jess, I'd love to do a little bit of a background on who you are, what you're about, why relationships, why is that something that you've helped with people, and what do you do? Just in short.
Very big question. Well, I started out as a mindset, an organizational mindset and performance coach. So basically what that meant is people would come to me whenever there was an issue that essentially no one else could solve. If there was a performance issue with either a staff member, a business owner, whoever in the organization needed some understanding about why the performance was low, they'd send them to me. So they affectionately called me the witch doctor. And I learned through that process. I used to try and have a structure and try and have, I guess, a bit of an agenda. But okay, I'll ask these questions and we'll do it in this time frame, and try to plan it out completely against my nature as a person and against my gift as a person as well. One of the things that I discovered is, as we'd be talking and as I would learn to just listen, I could hear what wasn't being said. I could see what wasn't being shown, almost, without being too woo-woo, almost like things would just come into my mind, and then I would ask the question, whatever was there to ask. There were so many times, Jace, where I was like, oh my gosh, what have I just done? Where are we gone? Like, we're just off on this tangent. I've lost the plot. And then the person on the other side would be like, how did you know that? I have no idea. It's like, you're in my brain. How did you know that? So I learned to trust myself in that aspect. So that's where I was for about 5 or 6 years until I went out, just went full time into my own coaching business. Mindset is, I have mastery around mindset, as you know. And part of what I say to people is, I'm a mindset coach that helps you get out of the mind and into your soul purpose. So the less organizational corporate name would be Soul Igniter. In relationships, because that's my passion. I believe that the quality of our life is determined by the quality of our relationships with self, romantic relationships, platonic relationships, all the relationships in our life. It's a long answer to your long question.
No, I love it, because look, this is what's really important, listeners, is that fundamentally the relationships that we have are going to be the things that are going to make us or break us in life. Would you agree?
Yes.
So when we're looking at what you do, you have this innate skill, and a lot of people who are what I call wizards, they have this ability to find things that are the unfindable. And I'm one of those people who would always find something that people just weren't able to find. And people like yourself, Jess, it's quite hard sometimes because you have this magic and a problem because you're the genius behind everything. And so quite often what happens, listeners, for people who find people like Jess, there's just this safety, there's a sense of understanding, there's a sense of depth. And you're like me, where's it come from? Well, it just comes from us. That's what happens, doesn't it? And it's an organic process. And I think what I'm hearing for you, Jess, is that you have this amazing ability to intuitively understand where to take people in the lane of human dynamics and relationship change.
Yeah, it is. And I think that's something that I feel like it's something I always have had. I just haven't owned it till later in life and in my profession. I remember being a kid, like literally a kid, and finding it so bizarre that adults would talk to me about adult things and somehow find comfort and solace and in the advice that me as a child was giving, or maybe not even advice. Like I certainly didn't have life experience at that stage, but for whatever reason, they were getting something from me, even as a kid. I just didn't know what it was. I just thought it was weird till I started understanding, actually, I think this is not maybe normal for everybody. This potentially is my skill or my gift and what I have to offer the world. And that's when I turned it, I guess, into a business model.
Yeah, and this is the same for me, listeners, as I was always, people, adults and all people at school would be crying on my shoulder and tell me all this stuff. And I'd be sitting there going, why me? Like, why are you telling me this stuff? As a little kid, you don't really understand, do you, when an adult who should know better is coming to the kid for advice.
Yeah, because I feel like, wisdom is the word that comes to me. And I feel like there's this part where, especially for me anyway, where wise or wisdom, those terms are usually reserved for like our few select elders. That's the way that we think, like older, have been through so much life experience, have traversed all of the things in life that there is to traverse. And then we're like, okay, they're our wise old elders who we listen to. When you're young, that's very hard to think, actually, somehow I also have wisdom, as if I've had experience that I haven't. And so I feel like that's one of the things that I try to, in my best attempts, explain. It's not necessarily that I know things. I don't think it's about me knowing things. It's not about my intelligence or, I just have opinions about everything. It's not about that. It's about, I believe things are given to me to know in the moment that it's needed to be known. And so that's why when I am in sessions or I'm guiding sessions, and if I learn, I have learned to get out of my own way and not have my own agenda, my own paradigms and belief systems or mindset in the session, then I am in that moment given something to know that helps that person. And there's so many times in a session where I'm learning, like, oh my gosh, I've just figured out that thing, or because it's been, given in that sense to help serve and to help others. And I truly believe a lot more people than realize have this gift as well, or have the ability to be able to tap into that, if not for others, for their self, being able to listen to their own soul rather than their own limited mind.
Yeah, and I think this is what's really, really important, Jess, is that both of us have a massive agreement. We have to talk mindset, don't we?
Yeah.
But because everyone understands the language, okay, mindset, and we hear this from the coaching industry over and over again. Now, when you spoke just there, is that little part is mindset. It's such a small fragment of how brilliant our minds can be. And when you meet someone like you, Jess, it creates an opportunity for people to get a bit of a vibe of someone who has a beyond mindset. So it's taking people out of the mind. Can you tell us from your opinion, like, do you know what you're doing, or what is it that you're doing that's sort of taking this idea of the brain, the human brain that has thoughts, to go beyond that, like going beyond and unraveling what's beyond it? How do you do that with your clients, and how do you get your clients to see differently?
I think like a just simple, and it's basic, but it's a simple framework that came to me quite a few years ago, which is, it's just the base that I might take clients through, is understanding. Most of us hear the word holistic, and we understand that that means an approach more than just focusing on one thing. And so holistic is mind, body, and soul, or spirit, or higher being, or whatever word resonates with people. And what most of us don't realize is that we try and operate in our life just from the mind, without realizing that we're also body, we're also soul, and that all three of them have essentially the same purpose if we get them into harmony and alignment, but they all have different functions, and they actually all communicate to us in different ways. So the way that I see it, and again, this is just basic, is the mind communicates through language, through words. So if you're sitting there and you're thinking about things, and you're almost talking to yourself, and you're having a dialogue through language, through reasoning, through rationale, through analyzing, all of those are functions of the mind. And that's how the mind communicates. The body communicates through physical expression. So am I energized? Am I fatigued? Do I have aches and pains? Like whatever sicknesses or illnesses or ailments in the body, through physical expression is how the body is trying to communicate. And then for the soul, or the spirit, the high being, it's our emotions, it's our feelings. And the caveat to that is, because some people are like, oh, but I'm thinking really bad thoughts, which is why I'm feeling really bad. And I'm like, yes, but that is still your spirit communicating that the thoughts that you're thinking are not in alignment with how the soul views you. So it's still communicating to you. All feelings and emotions, I believe, is coming from that higher part of ourselves, or the soul. And for whatever reason, just not even in a spiritual sense, just in a logical sense, for any of your listeners that have ever had an experience where it's like they didn't do something that they felt to do, or they did do something that they felt to do, or they just have that experience where it's like, oh shit, I knew that. Why didn't I do that? I knew that. So for some reason, there is something higher than our mind that sees broader than our mind can, and it's constantly communicating to us if we have new conditioning to value our feelings and our emotions, to value our body as well as our mind. Like, you think, Jace, all of the terminology that we have is like mind over matter. Yeah. Oh, that's saying the mind is more important than the body, right? We're instead of realizing we've got these three like super powerful tools, and we're trying to go through life with one. It's like building a house with a wrench. Where's your other tools?
Yeah, and I think this is really important, listeners, is that at school, we're just taught how to be connected with the mind, and we're told to leave those emotions to the side because they're the ones that create the erraticness, and we've got to make sure the yelly stuff is disappearing from school. So, and then we've got this body that's sort of telling us and giving us feedback mechanisms all the time, and we're not educated with the other two. And I think this is where we get really, really stuck in life, because if we're not educated with these other two even more important aspects than the third is the reservoir. It's like the end result of the other two. So if we only listen to that one thing and we haven't asked this one question, and I love this question, is why and where do we come from and what does it all mean? Like, if we don't have that questioning, our mind doesn't do that questioning, does it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think this is in what you're saying, Jace, or correct me if I'm wrong, but it's that feeling of we're trying to think our way through life rather than feel our way through life, and understanding that the brain, this is the way I view it, the brain is the implementer.
Yeah.
The soul should be the decision maker. That's how I feel, right? That the soul, spirit, the higher, the part that sees for whatever reason, the broader perspective, that's where the wisdom is. That's the one that we should be going to for our decision making, and using the beautiful, powerful brain to implement, to action, because that's its powerful function. Whereas when we just have the mind on top of everything, like you said, we're just using that for A, B, and C. We're actually using it in areas where it doesn't function best, or it's very limited. It can't see the bigger picture. It sees what it sees. It only knows what it knows, or it only believes what it's being told. And so we have, I think Jim Carrey, pretty sure he has this, like, he does this awesome TED talk or like graduation talk. And one of the things that he said is, he's like, fear, so often fear is disguised as practicality and, you know, rationality. And I can see that in so many areas of myself and in clients, where it's like they feel to do something, but they're like, no, that doesn't make sense. That's not a logical decision. That's not a smart business move. And they're using the mind to essentially shut down that little prompting that they felt, because they can't see or understand how it would work. And that's, to me, where it's like we're stunting our growth, because we have to know before we act, rather than trust the soul can see something, follow that, use the brain to implement.
Yeah, I hear that. And I think this is where it's so important that we've got to get help. I think, you know, when a lot of the time, listeners, when you're sitting in your own part, and we have this other part that wants to engulf itself, wants to communicate through us, we've been taught not to trust it, haven't we? Mm-hmm. And so this is where someone like you comes along, Jess. And so when you're connecting with your clients, and you can see that you're reading between the lines, you're getting the pieces and all the things that they're missing, that obviously probably seems quite obvious and logical to you, because you've been doing it for so long. How does that feel for a client when they get this opportunity to experience your magic, and to be able to be outside of someone and actually help them find what that bigger calling is about?
I think probably what it is, and actually I think you have this gift too, Jason, where it's my magic is helping people feel their magic.
Yeah.
So it's like in a session, and being able to see somebody, like, for the first time, actually feel themselves, like, and wade through so much layers of shame that they have around themselves, or who they are, or things that they have done in their life, whatever it may be. And my ability to not be able to judge any of that, and to be able to accept that person for who they are, allows them for a moment to feel that way too. And I really believe it's like my magic is helping someone meet themselves, and some for the first time. And that's where the power is. It's like, as a coach, if someone needs to keep coming to me, you know, for years and years on end, there's a difference between wanting to come to me every now and then for a tune-up and needing to come to me. I'm not doing my job. And my job is help them hear their own spirit, which is absolutely more important for them to listen to than even me or anybody else. You know, I'm just like fine tuning, like the old school radios, where I'm trying to help them tune into the frequency of their own soul. Being able to see that and witness that. And it's just like this, like, it's not even a light bulb. It's like, oh my God, that's who I am. And being able to feel love for who they are is just the most special thing that I ever witnessed, being on the other side of it.
Yeah, isn't it the most amazing feeling when someone gets that experience? You know, I know you and I have experienced tears and that sort of connection with me helping you. And I know that as a catalyst, we all need this, listeners, where someone comes in and does the support, and we all need an ear, because Jess and I are not perfect. We need help. I get help. Jess gets help. we all, sometimes I don't know about you, Jess, sometimes you help someone, I'm like, I sit there and go, man, I wish I had done what you just did just then, because I'm not there yet. And sometimes it's very frustrating being a leader, that has the capacity to hold such a big space for someone to find their ingredients when we're quite often missing our own.
And I think that's one of the greatest gifts that you ever gave me, Jace, was being able to, through you being able to actually see me, and me trusting, for whatever reason, that you were seeing me, was then what allowed me to see myself more clearer, because we're our own blind spot. And I'm a very self-aware person. I can figure out lots of things on my own, and then I'm very aware there's lots of things I can't figure out on my own, because I'm in it. I'm in my blind spot, and that's why I need people like you and others to help guide me on the path that I can't see, or the path where I need a little bit extra courage. I need someone to hold my hand, or like push me off the ledge.
I've done that a few times with people, but it's one of those things, isn't it? Like what you said there is so essential, and listeners, you've got to get this, is that we all have blind spots. So even when we could deliver something that's so magical that we need to hear, we might not be doing it at the same time. So one thing I've learned, I don't know about you, Jess, is that I look at everyone who I'm helping as supporting me becoming a better me. None of us are perfect. And I sit there and go, some of the things I've seen you do and how you promote yourself, completely inspired by your attitude, the way that you handle yourself, the way that you hold yourself. And I look and I get really inspired, and I think, wow, I wish I could be a little bit more Jess-like. And we quite often don't think this when we're the person doing the help, that we see absolute inspiration in our clients and what they actually bring to the table, because we're looking for magic that we are missing too. So when we see someone, I don't know about you, Jess, but this is what I find. I go, oh my God, Jess is this, Jess is that. And I'm like, God, I wish I could be a bit more of that in ourselves, because we get so engulfed in the magic of our clients. Do you do the same?
Yeah. And I think on that point too, I've never really, I understand it because there's comfortability and safety in it, but I've never really resonated with the find your tribe. Because to me, it's like one of my highest values is growth and evolution. And you can't grow to the same capacity at the same rate in echo chambers around everybody that thinks the same and is like-minded. Like I said, it feels safe. We don't feel threatened. We don't feel challenged. So we want to find our tribe where we feel at ease. But at the same time, if we really want exponential growth, we have to be able to have like this exponential ability to learn and change and break our paradigms, and an exponential open mindset to be able to have that growth. And so it's kind of being able to see, the more that I interact with people that I feel are totally different to me, have totally different beliefs and views, make totally different life decisions, and the more that I can interact with those people as well, the more I'm actually getting to meet a different part of myself, right? And being able to be like, oh, wow, that's a part I haven't really tapped into, or that's a part that maybe I shame or don't accept, but I can actually feel that's in me. So it allows me to see different elements of myself that I wouldn't normally see through the eyes of somebody else, through the experience of somebody else.
Yeah, I love that. And I think this is really important, listeners, is that I'm not a fan of finding your own tribe either, because the Academy is full of diverse people. And the reason why I like that is because it creates a challenge. So the people that you don't like, listeners, the people that piss you off, the people who have the opposite opinion of you, stop fighting them. Find out what the hell they're on so you can learn, because sometimes an opposite opinion is going to give you a different perspective and a different outlook. So left wing, right wing in politics, left and right brain people, A and B types. You've got to know how to meet people and learn and grow from them. And This is what I love about you, Jess, and we've spoken about this, and we're going to open this together. I'm going to open this with you anyway. Feeling a little bit alone sometimes can be a challenge when you are a system breaker, Jess. You know, you're not here to just abide by the rules. You don't do it illegally. You look at systems and you can see what's wrong so you can actually make them better. So both Jess and I have a natural negative to positive outlook, and that can actually make us other people can get pissed off with us because people get stuck in the closed mindset and get stuck in their belief-based understanding. And we come and say, well, what about this? And people go, well, fuck you, because you've just told me that I'm wrong. And we're not doing that, are we, Jess?
It's like adding another layer to a perspective, or it's like seeing it from a different angle as well. It's kind of I'm like a normal human too. When I think I'm right about something and someone comes along and challenges that, I'm a little like, I get a little bit miffed like anybody else. But at the same time, I'm like, what are they seeing that I'm not seeing? And how can I add that? Because what I have is just a piece. And so I'm going around collecting other pieces that is going to give me eventually one day the whole puzzle, right? And I think what sometimes we're not as open to is realizing, hey, I just have a piece and somebody else has a piece and somebody else has a piece. It's like, oh, no, I've got the whole thing. And so that's the way that I look at it, to not feel as threatened. It's like, what piece are they offering me?
Yeah.
So I can get the perspective.
Yeah, I was on a Facebook post just this morning, and someone was talking about judgment and how she was writing a book about it. And little Jason comes in and goes, beep, and sort of pokes the button of judgment. I said, judgment is awesome. It gives the extrapolation and the really deep connection to something that's going to make it even bigger. And our brains are wired to judge, and we're meant to actually judge. And it's a great catalyst. And when someone is processing you, on projecting on you, or you're doing the same, it creates this absolute haven of opportunity. And her response was, Jason, you're always making me think, right? And I said, I hope it wasn't being offensive to you. And she said, no, you're constantly in a place of making me think so deeply about what the hell I'm thinking about, because go on.
Just saying, she's awesome for being able to say you constantly make me think means she is somebody that is open. Yeah. She can turn around and be like, oh, no, that's not going to be a chapter in my book. I can tell she is somebody that is open to being able to see it from different angles to add to her already running thought processes.
Yeah, and I think, listeners, this is really important. Jess, you spoke about this, and I want to extrapolate on this a little bit with what you see is maybe missing in the world. Is you talked about now this is where the dynamic of the other pieces, in my opinion, come in. A closed mindset is a little mind, and you spoke about an open mind. Can you elaborate on that for the listeners a little bit for us?
On how to have an open mind, or what an open mind?
Let's go with both of those. How to have an open mind, and firstly, what does an open mind look like?
In my belief, an open mind is a mind that is willing to listen and consider other beliefs. And I feel like you can tell the difference, right? You can tell when someone's trying to be open-minded and they're sort of listening to you to say, yes, okay, I understand, but you can see they're not taking it on board to kind of sit with it and swish it around in their mouth and really be like, okay, how does that feel for me? They're like, okay, that's where you're coming from, sort of agree to disagree. Yeah. Versus somebody, I believe, who's not trying to be open-minded, who is open-minded, is not judging the concepts that are being placed to them as wrong, right? So like you said, judgment is not bad. It's if you're the way that you seem to be using it is like discernment as well, or look at it in that way, whereas we're always doing it, and it's super important for us to do, to be able to discern what is right and wrong for us. That's how we discover who we are and our uniqueness, all of that. And so not being able to judge something though is wrong, where it's I have times, Jason, where I literally, there's certain people in my life where I could be saying I agree, and I can feel that they think I'm disagreeing. It does not matter say, their like system is as if I am disagreeing with them, because in the mind it's kind of like she's here and I'm here, and without being able to recognize, as an open mind would, actually we're both standing on an enormous amount of common ground. We're just coming up with our little piece that we're trying to add to the mix. And so to go back, I think an open mind is trying to like listen and not get up. And person trying to be open-minded is trying to listen and not get upset, trying to tolerate what's being said. Whereas an actual open mind is taking in the information, really considering it, taking on board what fits and getting rid of what doesn't fit them.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. And the second part of that, Jace, would be how to have and how to foster more of an open mind. It's in its simplest form, one, trying to really embed a belief that I could always be wrong, or I could always not be seeing the whole picture. And so therefore, having that belief embedded is naturally just going to keep you open to searching for other pieces.
Listeners, think about this. When you were 15, and you are, unless there's 15-year-olds here, you double that age, 15 to 30. If you believe what you believed in as a 15-year-old and you're closed-minded, you'd still be a child at 30, and you'd still be trying to get pissed, trying to cheat, trying to get what you wanted. All of these sorts of behaviors would be running in your human dynamics right now. But if you're open-minded, everything that you thought about as a 15-year-old, a lot of it is bullshit. And then there were amazing pieces that you took along the way and grabbed, right? And this is the most important thing, Jess, is that I love being wrong. I actually love the fact that someone comes, and Anya does this with me all the time, my wife. She goes, I think this way. I'm like, holy moly. And I'm like, wow, that's a whole nother way of thinking. And we were talking about anger and fear one day, and we're both arguing about the creative forces of them both. And I'm a fear creator, she's an anger creator. And she checkmated me one day in the bathroom. And I just said, and I was just like, man, how do I learn this from you? Straight away, because I saw her point of view, and I was just like, I need to learn this anger creation you've got. And it was so brilliant the way that I can't remember how she articulated it, Jess, that I just stopped everything that I thought in that moment and went, you got something here. I want to add it to my bow. I've still got my fear creation. I just wanted this anger creation to blend in to get them uniformed really, really well. And I wanted them both. And I knew I didn't have the anger creation that Anya's got, because she's really massive cranky pants. And I was just like, I need this, right? And it was really cool because I was open-eared and prepared to be wrong. And as you said, to add to what we already know. And if we become, and this is where I hate this word, I'm not sure about you, Jess, I hate the word expert. The reason why is the moment you become one, your ears have disappeared. Right? I like an open-based learner, because then I know that I've had 22 years of working. I've done, over 30,000 sessions with clients. I am, in official terms, an expert. And the last thing I want to be considered is one, because I know that I'll lose the dynamic of learning of other people's opinions, beliefs, and storage. So one thing I know that you do really well, Jess, is because we know the common theme and the common ground of mindset and different pieces. So when someone comes in, we already quite often know that intel. So someone comes in and all we wanted to do is provide another piece of the intel that's on another angle,
And if we have an open-based person, that person just sucks that information in. It comes in like a straw through a drink. It's just like if someone can take that intel in, and you have this amazing intel that you have, and then someone comes in and says, what about this? And you suck it in like a straw rather than go, this is all bullshit. You are going to get double quantity of mechanism of connection to more of your ability while adding some intel from another side. Would you agree?
100%. And I have a personal experience of my own with my husband as well, who is, we're so similar in all the ways that matter, and we're chalk and cheese. Absolute chalk and cheese. And one of the things that he helped me discover through really kind of pushing against me, and he's been pushing against this for years, and I've been pushing it on for years, right? In this, I had discovered in myself that I had a tendency to look down on others because I'd look down on myself if they weren't disciplined enough to say no. Right? And everybody's got their vices. But so one of the topics with my husband, it was kind of like, well, if you know that that is bad for your body and you can't say no, that shows weakness. That shows that you're not disciplined. And he would constantly disagree. And he was like, no, I'm not weak. I don't appreciate you saying that's weakness and those sorts of things. And I was like, but I just could not understand how it wasn't. Because I found a lot of like pride and strength in myself being able to say no. Like I spent 31 years of my life, never had a sip of alcohol, never had a puff of a smoke, didn't drink tea and coffee, all of those things. And I was very much like, yes, look how disciplined I am. Now him pushing back on me and sort of not just absorbing that and being like, yes, I'm right, kept me thinking about it, kept me challenging it. And one day that I actually discovered through his help of pushback was it's not actually discipline for me, it's fear. Because if I have a sip of alcohol, I fear that I've just destroyed my body. Right? I'm like, oh no, there's 10 wrinkles just come on my face because my liver's just died. Like I'm constantly thinking, how is that going to hurt me or damage me? And because I'm so afraid, I'm extremely controlling. Extremely controlling of myself. And so I turned control and made it discipline, made it sound something that was good and something that we valued. I'm like, look how disciplined I am. Look how strong I am. You're weak because you can't say no and you can't control it. And I realized, no, he just doesn't operate from the fear that I operate. He was like, yeah, if I have a drink and it's not good for me, whatever. I enjoy it. I'll be fine. My body is a machine. I process it. That's how he thinks. He doesn't come from fear.
Yeah.
I do. And so that was something that's been a life-changing lesson for me to realize all the ways that I think I'm disciplined is actually my controlling nature because I'm afraid. I never would have learned that piece for myself and therefore stopped looking at me and everybody else as weak for having a vice if it wasn't for me and him and that push and pull between I want him to accept that I'm right and he's like, no. And so I kept challenging it till I realized, Jess, you're not right. You ain't right at all. And here's a beautiful piece for you to now navigate in your life.
I love this because this is so interesting around how our human dynamics are, because we can look and we can validate and we have our virtue. We don't realize it's a vice until it can get pulled out and called out. And so it looks good on paper, right? That, not having a drink. I know I had to stop drinking because my liver went shot, right? So I had to make a choice, right? Because what's that?
You validate my fear.
Yeah. So I ended up having a problem. Because I've got a weak constitution in some ways that I've had to let go of things. That it was not something that I said, okay, and I asked the question, what can I do to actually be better? And I had to let go of some things that I let them go for health reasons, and they were really important to me. So sometimes, what we hear and what's okay and what's not is what we've got to learn. And that's what an open mind is meant to do. You know, sometimes I look at people, Jess, and I go, man, I wish I could eat that cake. I can't eat that cake, you know, because I know my body won't accept it over time. And I think, guys, this is where our concept of being really open to listening is so important. You know, I've learned from being a healer for so long, there's so many things that I know about the human body now, you know, guides and all of these things that people do in spirituality. I stopped because I started seeing things that were very different. I had to try and find them in books, and they're not in books. So I realized that there was a whole nother paradigm. But if I go and speak to a person who has a guide, I don't necessarily say, hey, they're not real, you know, because I give people an opportunity, and I take people through a process to understand what they're actually picking up on. Right. So this is a bit of an open loop, guys. I'm not trying to, I'd have to talk too much about what I'd be speaking about here. It's like if someone's really close, guides are this and they're this and this is what they do, they won't listen to my key. Right. I'll have another key to another piece of intel, and I'm not saying they're not real. I'm just saying there's another way to look at it. Right. And that's what we've got to do when we're open. So, Jess, when we're looking at relationships, how do you formulate, how do you help build connections and, you know, help people create relationships and help them formulate better relationships with the work that you do?
I think like the tendency for most people is to go see somebody, you know, go get help if their relationship is failing or struggling, rather than recognizing that a relationship can always improve. You can have a good relationship, and for I would say I'm incredibly blessed, but I was also incredibly picky. So I'll give myself props for that too. And I have a fantastic relationship because I was very mindful of what I wanted. And so many people, Jace, were like, you're too picky, Jess. You're too picky. What you want doesn't exist. And you're going to have to lower your standards so you can find somebody. They're like, well, you're never going to get married or be in a relationship. I used to hear that all the time. And now that I have the relationship that I have, guess what people say? Oh, you're so lucky, Jess.
Oh, yeah.
You're so lucky.
Isn't that the most annoying thing?
So annoying. I'm like, hang on. I was too picky. And then I got exactly what it is that I was after. And now I'm just so lucky, right? But even in having a very good, solid, structural relationship, there are still so many ways that Dennis and I have improved our relationship. And one of the things that I love in working with couples or just working individually, because it is interesting. A lot of couples come to me, Jace, and it often becomes like the relationship is just being polluted by their individual stuff, right? And so it's like if you're willing to work on your individual stuff and you're willing to work on your individual stuff, then the relationship starts to flourish, because the relationship's like the baby of two people.
Yeah.
You know? And so being able to recognize that every relationship can be enhanced. And the beauty with that, Jace, is you actually get to fall in love over and over and over again with the person you've been with for so many years, because you keep seeing different layers of them. You keep uncovering new things to them. They keep evolving. I keep evolving. And so it's like newer versions every year, or, you know, every month, whatever, just newer versions of each other that you then get to fall in love with over and over again. And that's how, you know, so many people fear their great relationships, all hot and fiery, and they fear it's just going to sizzle out and fizzle out. And then they're like, oh, there's no spark left and there's no chemistry, and we're just like roommates and we're so complacent and, you know, nitpicky, all of those kind of things, that the relationship is not as sweet as it once was. And that only really happens if two people stop growing and stop evolving. Then the relationship is not growing and evolving, which, like I said, is the baby of two people.
Yeah, I hear you. And I think this is important, listeners, is that I know I've worked with relationships for a long period of time. And one thing I've noticed and you tell me from your perspective, is that sometimes one person's growing, and the trouble is what they're doing wrong. And this is why I'm going to point out what they're doing wrong. They're actually not inviting the other person in on the game. So they're growing and they're going, well, I'm just going to keep this growth to myself while the other person's over here. And that creates a divide. And I've seen this so often. Have you noticed that, Jess, where, you know, someone comes in and does personal development and they don't, there's no buy-in on the other side. So they don't know what the other person's doing. And then they voice it and the other person says something and they go, oh, well, they don't understand. So they create this problem by one person developing and the other person saying, well, they're not interested. Well, they are, guys, by the way. You've got to let them in. Don't hide the stuff you're learning from them. This pisses me off. Anyway, you tell me what you think.
Yeah, well, I mean, of course, there's obviously going to be the exception to that. And so maybe some of your listeners have been in a position where the other is unwilling to grow. And maybe what happened is you have a growth mindset and you married someone with a closed mindset that's not willing to shift. And in some of those exceptions, yes, it is going to be very difficult. And sometimes the relationship, you've outgrown the relationship. But what you're talking about here too is also very common, because I think people don't know how to do what you're saying. They try and tell the other person what they're doing and what they're learning. And if the other person doesn't agree, we feel threatened. It's like, oh no, I'm casting my pearls before swine. And I don't want to share them now because they're not just agreeing with me. And again, that comes back to where we just want to find our tribe. We just want to be agreed with. We just want to be validated. And when it's your partner, so often, and I have to catch myself on this too, it's like your partner you think is an extension of you, right? We like mold into one, like, oh, this is my other half. And it's like somehow they're an extension of you. Therefore, we want them more than anybody to agree with what we're thinking and in what we're doing. And if they don't, and we're not open to allowing them to disagree and still having a wonderful relationship, then we start pushing them out. We start closing off to them. We start feeling unsafe. We start feeling like, oh no, they don't get me. They don't understand me anymore. They're not with me on this journey. And we start kind of shoving them off the wagon rather than recognizing you can share with them and they just might not agree with you. And can that be okay? Right? They might still be interested in what you're saying, but they might not come to agree straight away, which is the example I gave before. The amount of times me and Dennis have completely disagreed on a fundamental belief system in either of us. And then years later, it's been like, and there we are. Now we match on that, right? Yeah. Where it's just like so interesting that I used to say, that was wrong, that was wrong, that was wrong. And now I'm actually there. The same place. And so it's not trying to close the door on somebody because, oh no, our relationship's bad if we don't agree.
That's
again,
right.
Exception, which I mentioned, and other times it's just learning how to let the other person be there, even if they're not agreeing straight away.
Yeah. And I had that exception. I had a person that wasn't growing with me and I tried to make it work and it didn't. And that's where we do have an incompatibility. It's really, really important. And then there's the other bit, and we've got to have that. We've got to have conflict. We've got to be prepared for it. And that's what relationships create the most growth. Would you agree, Jess, is having healthy based conflict? And how do you do your healthy based conflict in your personal relationship? How does it work? I love Dennis. I love you too. How do you do it in your dynamic? So we can get a bit of an idea of how you do it well.
And again, acknowledging that everybody is different. So every personality is different. And this is why I don't necessarily say, hey, here's a model for every single person to follow, because you do have to take into consideration that, you know, Dennis is an exceptional man, right? And he's extremely open.
And I'm extremely so good looking.
He is very good looking.
He's so. I look at him, he's like a picture postcard to me. I look at him and I just go, God, you are one good looking man. He's-
Very but it is, I'm acknowledging for people that are listening that are in very tricky relationships that yes, not every man is as emotionally open as Dennis is, and not every woman is as emotionally intelligent as I am, right? So we acknowledge those difficulties sometimes have to be worked on, and so there's not always a framework or a model. But one of just a few things which will help everybody is being quick to apologize. I cannot tell you how many relationships that I'm coaching that I've been on a call or a session with them, and I know, Jace, they agree. They are literally agreeing with each other, and they see when I've explained to them something, they're like, oh, you're right. So they know in that moment where they've been wrong, and yet the apology still won't come. I'm like, well, hang on. You recognize it because you're both saying, yeah, I get really angry and I sort of fly off the handles. You're acknowledging what you're doing, essentially, that's not healthy. Yet, how much do you apologize? Oh, never. So it's actually like this habit of being able to, at least one, right? For us, Dennis is a very quick apologizer. And I've had to work with him in a way that, for me, I need to know what he's apologizing for, to know that he's not just saying, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm like, I don't want to be brushed off. Yeah. So he's like, okay, I am genuinely sorry. And so I've got to sort of tell Jess, I'm sorry for X, Y, and Z. And then I'm like, got it. He does acknowledge what he's sorry for. And it's like, you think about it in this way. The reason why I say apologizing is so important. You've got two swords up at each other. And to get validation, it's like a race to the most victim position. Who's been victimized the most? You're like sprinting to, no, but you did this. Yes, yeah, but I did that because you said this. And you're like chasing to get to the position where it's like, I was the most victimized. And if they can see I was the most victimized, then I might get the acknowledgement, the validation, and then I might get the apology. And so it's just no one's putting their swords down. No one's putting their shields down. This minute someone does and goes, oh, I see what you're saying. I see how you got that now. I understand that. I apologize for that part. Because as soon as someone lowers their weapon, straight away you feel like lowering yours, because you don't want to stab somebody that's open and vulnerable. It's like if you're having a sword fight, go for gold. But if someone's dropped theirs, it's like, I don't want to stab them when they're put their shield down. Yeah. So that is one of the quickest, simplest ways to, and I know it sounds so cliche, but yet why do not more people do it? I'd apologize quicker. And also giving each other the benefit of the doubt. I am a gremlin sometimes, Jace, like I can be. And so Dennis, actually, this is key. I'd really like your listeners to hear. I used to want Dennis to not get upset when I was upset.
Yeah, wow.
And everyone used to say, that is so unreasonable, Jess. Like you can't be like grumpy at him or telling him off and expect him not to get upset. And what I didn't realize, because I didn't have the language at the time, what I was asking from him was to be emotionally independent. So if I'm in a bad mood, if I was in a bad mood, he'd take that personally, even if it had nothing to do with him, and try and fix it and get defensive. And now I'm dealing with his emotions as well as trying to deal with my own. Whereas I was like, actually, can you stay in your own emotional sovereignty? Can you be emotionally independent? You can still be happy if I'm in a bad mood. And I knew intuitively, like I said before, I had all the framework, that is what I needed at that time.
Yeah.
And the more self-aware that I was, because Jace, I believe that communication is not the key to a relationship. Self-awareness is the key to a relationship.
Thank God for that.
Or you're just going to communicate rubbish. If you don't have self-awareness, and self-accountability to say, hey, do you know what? This is what's going on for me. I've actually sat with this. I've figured out what I'm getting triggered about. I've figured out what's going on for me. Now I'm going to communicate that with self-accountability. That's the key. Otherwise, you're just communicating BS and it's just going around in circles. So I would come to Dennis with my self-awareness, with my self-accountability, till he finally realized, oh, it's not actually about me. And the minute that he got that, he could stop being so defensive. He was emotionally independent. And that's why now he calls me a gremlin or a munchkin. So if I'm in a bad mood, he's like, oh, Munchie's here, is she? Like, he calls my Munchie. He was like, oh, Munchie's back. And he'll just like kind of tease me or be like, oh, we're in one of those moods, are we? And for me, that makes me laugh rather than getting upset at me. Now I'm upset at him for being upset at me and blah, blah, blah. And I just kind of laugh or giggle, or he'll do like a nudie run through the house and be like, you know, he goes, peace, like throws up the peace sign if I'm grumpy, like he would do, because he's not taking it personally. That allows him to stay in his own emotional state, and that allows him to actually lighten my grumpy mood and vice versa. So hopefully that's something important that for your listeners to hear. It's like, oh, okay, emotional independence, crucial for a healthy, thriving relationship where you're not both bringing each other down when one's feeling down.
Okay, so just let me hear this. You tell me if I'm right or wrong or not around what you do, just succinctly. You're here to bring a deep level of personal awareness to your clients so they can be emotionally independent with their own stuff, to create accountability within a relationship so they can transform it at the best of their ability.
Mm-hmm. Can you send that to me? I love that. It's a great new bio.
It's recorded, love. But that's your thing. You know, that's what you do so well. And I think it's so important, listeners. What Jess does is magical. She helps bring, and through awareness and the accountability, then your clients don't need you so much. The trouble is with you, Jess, is that you're a wizard, right? The trouble with wizards is wizards always are wanted, right? So Jess is always going to be that person. Oh, I need to see Jess for a reason, but she wants people to utilize her so everyone gets their own self-awareness, creates the life that they really want. And Jess is always going to get poked for more, because that's what wizards do. Everyone needs a wizard in their life. So Jess, I really want to thank you for jumping on Uncovered for today and giving the listeners the opportunity to understand the fundamental principles of how to create a really good, healthy relationship. Now, I'm going to put all Jess's details in the show notes so you can find her. And I suggest that if you need some help with relationships, Jess is the person who can really help you. And one really important thing that you heard today is that she has a growth-based relationship. Now, she's living and breathing the example of what you need. And a lot of people that I know who are in this relationship space aren't. That's the truth. Now, she's the real deal, because I know Dennis and I know Jess very, very well. And I know they're working on a growth-based relationship, and this is essential. So, Jess, thank you so much for giving us your magic today. I really appreciate you and what you're doing here on the planet.
Thanks so much for listening to our podcast. We really appreciate you, and we really appreciate your time, because time is so valuable. What we'd love you guys to do, if you like this podcast, if you could share it with your friends, and also our website address for the podcast is www.wellnessbreakthroughacademypodcast.com. Our website is www.wellnessbreakthroughacademy.com. We have a free Facebook group called Wellness Leadership Evolution, so search for that. I'd love it if you could add me as a friend on Facebook. I don't bite, so add me as a friend. And if you want some help and you would really like some support from us in the Academy, jump in. We have a process. You can do a break-in call to connect in with us. We do small courses. We have lots of things that we share. So we'd love the opportunity to give you a chance to change your life and turn it into a free one. You are one transformation away from change. Come and catch up.